Touch the leg and good evening, everybody. And touch the leg, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, those who are watching live from Tibet House YouTube channel. And we are 7 minutes delayed, and we are very sorry for that. And now I would like to request, before I start the program, that if anybody could kindly keep your mobile phone on silent mode or switch off mode so that it would avoid any interruption, please. Thank you. And my name is Tenzin Doma, and I'm a program coordinator of Tibet House Culture Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, New Delhi. And I, on behalf of Tibet House, New Delhi, feel privileged to extend our warm welcome to our speaker, Dr. Jon Kolkin ji, and Professor Kaveri Gill, and especially our director, Venerable Geshe-la, for all of your presence, and to all the participants who have gathered here. And thank you very much for the live audience, those who are watching live from Tibet House YouTube, and it's been sharing in Tibet House Facebook as well. And I would like to thank you for all the Tibet House staff, before I start, that those who are working tirelessly from the back side. And now I would like to introduce the monthly lecture, which is on living a balanced life, guided by compassion and wisdom. And I would like to welcome especially again to our speaker, Dr. Jon Kolkin, Professor Kaveri Gilji, for your presence here for this lecture. And before I proceed, I'd like to request Dr. Jon Kolkin, Professor Kaveri Gilji, and Venerable Geshe-la to kindly light the lamp of the wisdom, please. With folded hands, I beseech the Buddhas of all directions to shine the light of Dharma for all bewildered misery's gloom. With folded hands, I beseech the Buddhas of all directions to shine the light of Dharma for all bewildered misery's gloom. With folded hands, I beseech the Buddhas of all directions to shine the light of Dharma for all bewildered misery's gloom. Folded hands, I beseech the Buddhas of all directions to shine the light of Dharma for all bewildered misery's gloom. Thank you. Yeah. And now I would like to introduce a brief about Tibet House. And Tibet House was established in 1965 by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and supported by Indian government, and it was inaugurated then. And the purpose of establishment of Tibet House is to disseminate the rich culture of Tibet after Tibet was invaded by the Communist Chinese in 1949, and eventually leading to His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the great mass of Tibetans being refugees and taken asylum in India in 1959. As I've indicated before, the purpose of establishing Tibet House to disseminate the civilization, the culture of Tibet, and the Tibetan people to the world. And it is important, the Delhi itself, where the Tibetan culture and Tibetan tradition can be shared others, fellow citizens of the world. And Tibet House has a museum and library and the publication department, which publishes several books in a year. Presently, Tibet House offers 4 different courses, which are Nalanda Master's course. It's a 5 years course, Nalanda Diploma course, a 14-month course, and Nalanda Certificate course, and the Tibetan Language course, which is a 4 months course. And the detailed information about these above courses are available in Tibet House website. And those who are interested in joining and participating in these courses, please go through our website, please. And now I would like to request Dr. Kaveri Gilji to kindly proceed the session. Before I proceed, I would like to give a brief introduction about her. Professor Kaveri Gilji is a non-resident senior fellow at Center of Excellence in Himalayan Studies, School of Humanities and Social Science, Shiv Nadar University, Delhi, and formerly professor and head of the department at their Department of International Relations and Governance Studies. She gained her doctoral degree from the University of Cambridge, United Kingdom, and subsequently taught there. By invitation, she served as the principal of the Dalai Lama Institute of Higher Education, Bangalore, during 2021 to 22. She has actively studied Nalanda Buddhist philosophy for the last decade, and on 2nd June 2023, in the convocation ceremony presided over the His Holiness the Dalai Lama, received an advanced postgraduate diploma in an exam mode, Nalanda Master's Course, a 6-year duration, batch 2017 to 2022, in Buddhist philosophy from Tibet House, New Delhi. In addition to the courses in her discipline of political economy, she has taught 3 iterations of an undergraduate course built to capacity entitled Secular Ethics for a Millennial, based on His Holiness' ideas of universal ethics and focus on teaching the importance of practicing wisdom and compassion in daily life. Dr. Karila, please proceed. Thank you.
So, good evening, and Tashi Delhi. My sincere apologies to everybody. There's been rain in Delhi, and so I got a bit late. I'm so sorry for the audience to keep you waiting. So it's really a great honor. It's such a great honor to welcome Dr. Jon Kolkin this evening to Tibet House. I begin by addressing Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdullah, the director of Tibet House, the online audience, and everyone who's gathered here today to listen to your most interesting, the title of your talk really intrigued me. And as I have been tasked with just saying 5 minutes of some words before I introduce you and we go to your no doubt fascinating lecture, I would just like to give a bit of an introduction. It really intrigued me that the title of your talk is Living a Balanced Life Guided by Compassion and Wisdom. And for auspiciousness, I will just begin by reciting 2 verses that are Jangchup Semchuk Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam Ke Korche, Ke Panam Pa Me Payang, Gong Ne Gong Du Felwa Shok, Tong Ni Tawa Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam Ke Korche, Ke Panam Pa Me Payang, Gong Ne Gong Du Felwa Shok. These are, so may the supreme bodhicitta that has arisen arise and go evermore, and may that which has not arisen arise and go evermore, may that which has arisen not diminish. And similarly for the wisdom of emptiness. And in this tradition, if we look at the texts of, so talking about the tradition of the great Nalanda masters, upheld today by the foremost lineage holder, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, if you look at the texts of these masters, these qualities of wisdom and compassion are always intertwined. And I read some of the most beautiful closing 3 verses of the 6th chapter on the mind generation in Acharya Chandrakriti, whose seminal text on wisdom, his closing verses of this ground and what are the qualities. And he says that just like a medicinal fruit lying in his open palm, illuminated by the rays of his intelligence, the Bodhisattva perceives the entire triple world of existence as primordially devoid of arising. And through the power of conventional truth, he journeys to cessation. Though endowed always with a mind immersed in cessation, he will also generate compassion towards beings bereft of a protector. He will, as described earlier, defeat through his intelligence as well all those disciples born from Sugata's speech and middling Buddhas. His white wings of conventional truth and suchness spread wide, the king of swans shall cruise at the front of all the swan-like beings, and through the powerful force of the mind of his virtues, he shall travel to the shores of the oceans of Buddha's excellent qualities. So this is, of course, at the level of and this text opens also with the praise to compassion, as you probably know, and much better than me. But today here, I want to really say that, this intertwining of wisdom and compassion as understood in our everyday reality uh, is something that I find so precious. And so I think if we think about His Holiness always saying that if we seek happiness for ourselves, we should practice compassion. And if we seek happiness for others as well, we should too, again, practice compassion. And I think to just take this higher level, opening of these great Nalanda masters and their precious teachings, and boil them down really to what you are going to talk about today, which is a life that is guided, and any life guided by these two principles. I think if we know from uh, our own understanding that wisdom is the only liberating path. Everything else is just a ripening path. Um, and this wisdom, understood as seeing the nature of reality for what it is at the most sophisticated level, um, how that leads one to generate compassion. And similarly, they kind of support each other and deepen each other. And if we take compassion to be a mental factor of love and affection, which wishes others to be freed from suffering and the causes of suffering, we see that it has two elements that need to be generated, which is basically love for other beings and then seeing their suffering. And I think seeing the suffering of for oneself, we generate renunciation, and seeing the suffering of others, which I'm sure you are going to talk about profoundly, is what makes us generate this great compassion. And I think here I find this tradition so profound because at a practical level, I think when they talk about how to generate, if we look at the levels of compassion, one is for biological, say a mother for her child, but then to extend that outwards, to people we don't know, and then even more to people who are very difficult, perceived as difficult or are difficult to oneself. That is really quite hard, but I think it's doable. And the reason is because, again, this possibility for cognitive change. And again, I have to credit these teachings because if you think about the mental factors of discrimination, how do we see a situation or people? And then from that comes a feeling towards them, which can be a one of closeness or one of pushing away and aversion. And then based of that, we will generate some kind of intention, mental, physical, verbal, and undertake these actions. And I think at that level, this very, very practical intertwining of, uh, the basically the wisdom side, which we can understand as our common humanity, our common aspiration for happiness, and our interdependence. And with that, we look at this, the ground of compassion, because in the end, others' happiness is our happiness. I think this, as you surely are going to talk most beautifully about this evening. So with that, I will just give a brief introduction. So Dr. Jon Kolkin has a rare set of life experiences, and I was just reading his bio, and it made me think I'm so interested to hear this talk that make him uniquely qualified to share universally relevant, science-based, practical strategies for living a balanced life guided by compassion and wisdom. He is the global medical volunteer, 20 plus years, internationally recognized award winning photographer, accomplished musician, athlete, and the president of the Shades of Compassion Foundation. He has had 4 audiences with the 14th Dalai Lama and has been the principal organizer of numerous compassion centered initiatives worldwide in collaboration with representatives of His Holiness and others. His book, Inner Harmony, Living in Balance, which includes forewords by the Dalai Lama and the Queen Mother of Bhutan, has received 3 international book awards. So today he's going to speak to us, and I'm greatly looking forward and extending you a very, very warm welcome to Tibet House, Delhi.
Use this one. Testing 1, 2, 3. It's going to work. I've got the thumbs up in the back, so I think we're in good shape. It's when the person in the back's going, that's when I start getting a little concerned. What I think I would like to do is really jump right in after that wonderful introduction, because the first slide that I typically have is one of gratitude. It's such an honor to be here. I really am humbled by this opportunity. And, you know, also very grateful to the Tibet House, the Venerable, to Dr. Gill, and to all the organizers of this event, along with all the invited guests. Also my gratitude to His Holiness, who I've had the honor of being with on more than one occasion. And as was mentioned, he, 2 months ago, I was up in Dharamsala, and as a thank you gift to His Holiness, gave him a copy of the book that he was kind enough to provide a forward for. I've had the distinct honor of working very closely with a number of His Holiness's representatives, and wanted to thank them also, but also our foundation, which promotes sustained effective engagement in acts of compassion among a diverse population worldwide. That's our objective. We do a number of compassion-centered initiatives, museum exhibitions. That's why I'm actually here in Delhi now. We have an exhibition at the Museo Camera that just came from the Tibet Museum up in Dharamsala on compassion. We do a number of compassion-centered lesson plans in collaboration with Emory's C Learning on an international basis. We're doing projects with children with disabilities, microgrants for women with disadvantaged backgrounds, women with breast cancer, and animal welfare. But finally, I'd like to thank my family. You'll notice there's one person here that's kind of in all the photographs. Guess who that is? My granddaughter. But now she's competing with her younger sister for everyone's attention and affection. So just quickly an outline of what we'll be talking about today. What's the source of true happiness? What are impediments to achieving true happiness? What are some practical strategies that we can all incorporate into our lives that might help us get on track? Because obviously we all need this. We all need this. But we get off track. And then we can open up to conversation and questions. So I want to also emphasize that what I'll be speaking about is a personal perspective. I'm not an authority. In fact, I'm somewhat dyslexic. I don't like to read. I'm not a scholar. My experience in the world is through interaction mostly. So I don't have the scholarly knowledge of probably just about everyone here. But hopefully my perspective based on my background will be of some value. But at the same time, emphasizing that everyone needs to find their own path. There's not just one way to go. So take whatever I say with a grain of salt, because again, you need to find your own path. Who wants to be happy? 100%. Okay, well, wait, we got one or two. Okay, we'll make 99.99% of us want to be happy. Okay, so what's the recipe for happiness? Well, science, and remember, I have a background in medicine and in science. So for me, I look at what the science teaches us. Thank you. I got it. So the sociology studies show that there are basically 5 extrinsic factors, regardless of our background, our socioeconomic background, that are essential for happiness. Number one, a roof over our heads. Okay. Number two, enough food to live. Number three, palatable water. Number four, a secure environment. And then there's a fifth factor. A Harvard study has been looking at men starting in 1938 from a disadvantaged portion of Boston, that's in the United States, and has followed them up till 2023, looking at what were the common factors for them to be truly happy. One factor was taking care of physical health. That means proper exercise, proper sleep, proper nutrition. The other factor, the fifth factor of the five, is when people were committed to things in the world beyond themselves, they were so much happier. Community, and you define what you mean by community, and strong personal relationships. Those are the external factors, okay? But the reality is that we can't control all of those external factors, all those things that happen in the world and in our lives. But how we respond, that is a choice. That is a choice. And that's where Buddhist philosophy is so helpful to so many of us. Because it's not a matter of just blanking out all the things that are happening. It's an understanding of the reality of what is there, and how are we then going to process that? How is our heart mind going to respond in that situation? So what I would like to suggest is this is one thing that can be very empowering. If we look inward and we have a healthy mindset and have the toolkit we need, then we can navigate through all those challenges. I suspect all of you have seen the documentary Mission Joy with the Dalai Lama and his friend Desmond Tutu. They got together, I think, 5 times. And both came from challenging situations. But they developed a process whereby they could deal with those challenges in a healthy way, So, what intrinsic, internal factors contribute to happiness? Well, the term that I like to use is inner harmony. His Holiness uses the term inner peace. This doesn't mean going through from a chaotic world where everything is upside down to this bland, I'm just in this state of nothingness, okay? What we're talking about is staying in what's called the resiliency zone. I like to call it the Goldilocks zone. What is that? Sure, we're going to have shots of adrenaline from time to time and get really, really excited about things. As long as we stay within that healthy resiliency zone, that's okay. But it's those false forms of happiness that gets us out of whack. Similarly, we can have situations where we get really, really low, out of context with what's really going on in our lives, because our mental process is not necessarily having the toolkit to stay within that zone. What I'd like to suggest that is the only way we can really achieve that inner harmony is if we live a balanced life. And a balanced life is staying within that resiliency zone. Living a balanced life, however, in my opinion, and I'm thinking many others, requires compassion, guided by wisdom. And all of you know, even better than I, how that's shown and practiced in Buddhism. Compassion, wisdom, and when praying, crossing them, inseparable. If someone wants to do good, may have the best of intentions, But if they're not guided by wisdom, it's not true compassion. I'm sure all of you are familiar with Bhutan, a neighbor here, known for measuring wealth by gross national happiness. During the COVID-19 response, the fifth king, who's shown here, they were able to gather up enough vaccine to inoculate the entire adult population. And as you know, in the Himalayas, spread out all over the place. And what the king said was, we're going to set aside 14 days for everyone to get vaccinated that wants to get vaccinated. And I will not get vaccinated until the 14th day. That's wisdom. Setting the example. He's no more important than everyone else in the country. Within 14 days, 97% of the population was vaccinated. So this is going to be something where I'm going to be a little bit controversial. So I apologize for that ahead of time. It's because of my lack of intelligence, we'll put it that way. What is compassion? My definition is a little bit different than what you will read in Webster's dictionary. The intention to respond with kindness toward those who might benefit, motivated by a true concern for their well-being, not what am I going to get out of it. Okay. It's the same regardless of what someone's background is. It's the golden rule, came from the Jewish Torah, love thy neighbor as thyself, 7th century BCE. But it's the same in all religions in one form or another. But why do I say kindness toward those who might benefit, not kindness toward those who are suffering? This is where my medical background comes into play. I would suggest that suffering is actually a mistranslation to a certain extent of dukkha. In Sanskrit, sukha, the antonym of dukkha, is at ease or in balance. Dukkha, non-ease or out of balance. The original analogy for dukkha was probably the wheels of an ox cart being out of alignment, out of balance. Therefore, compassion targets all who are out of balance. I can relate to that. Okay. And the act of compassion frequently benefits both the giver and receiver. In contrast, pushing ourselves to physically share in the suffering of others, which is called affective empathy, can be dangerous. And I've seen this in the medical world over and over and over again. I want to emphasize that repeatedly absorbing the suffering of others, whether intentional or unintentional, because it's a natural reflex, it's our Buddha nature. If we see someone falling down, oh my gosh, it's natural to feel something about what they're feeling. But you don't have to feel their pain in order to be compassionate. If a physician felt the pain of every person that walked into their office, they would burn out, which is what's happening. Okay? Repeatedly feeling and absorbing the suffering of others leads to chronic distress and anxiety. Chronic stress in the United States before the pandemic affected over 60% of the adult population. The number of physical and emotional illnesses associated with that is astronomical around the world. Leads to empathic fatigue, not compassion fatigue, empathy fatigue, exhaustion, social engagement, and burnout. Safely absorbing the suffering of others while avoiding personal harm requires extensive training under expert supervision. That's what Tonglen's all about. Now, the Dalai Lama and others are well trained in that, they can take on that suffering and do it effectively. But most of us mortals don't have the toolkit to do that effectively. So we have to be very careful. We have to be very careful. And studies show that actually sharing in someone else's suffering, is not a prerequisite to effectively responding to their situation with compassion. Now, you can look at things from their perspective. That's different than soaking in their suffering. Okay? So there are different types of empathy, but affective empathy is the one you need to be very careful with. Hillel's a Jewish scholar, and he has this 3-stanza quote. He states, "If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when?" Compassion for self balanced with compassion for others with action. Has to include action. Otherwise, it's just a thought. Fortunately, most infants are instinctively kind. My granddaughter and one of my daughters, it's their Buddha nature. Okay? But so what are some of the root causes of being unhappy, being out of balance? I would suggest one is losing sight of our core values. And think about that. Take 30 seconds. What are my 1 or 2 core values? They're different for everyone, but what are they? Whatever core values are, and this is what helps me, helps in determining our long-term goals. So we can project out, where do I want to be 5 years from now? Where do I want to do with my studies? What kind of a family do I want to have? Which in turn help with determining our daily priorities and actions. We all consciously or subconsciously make thousands of decisions every single day. It can be overwhelming. But if we have some idea of what our values are, it helps us sift through that. One of the things that I do before going to sleep at night is think about, what are the 2 or 3 most important things for me to try and accomplish tomorrow? I may not accomplish them, but I try to have realistic expectations and go from there. But at least they're guided by values, and then things go from there. His Holiness has a 3-stanza quote that I also love. Man, and having 2 daughters and 2 granddaughters, I say, and women, sacrifices his health for money. Sure. Too close? Oh, fine. Sorry about that. Is that good now? Ah, wonderful. You got to give me feedback, folks. Help me out. Man and woman sacrifices his health for money, then sacrifices money to recuperate. It's an imbalance. He is so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present. We only have the present. We don't have the past. We don't have the future. We just have the present. Right? He lives as if he is never going to die, then dies having never really lived. These missed opportunities are often a byproduct of destructive emotions, negative emotions. You've heard that term before, right? One, the category of greed, power. Here it says, my real money is an insatiable greed. Ego, arrogance. I'm getting a little tired of your holier than thou attitude. That's Swiss cheese there. Envy, resentment, or anger, of course the Johnsons got the bigger cloud. And then again, finally, anger. Thank you for calling anger management. What that do you want? So those are things that get us off track. So what's the antidote? What's the antidote? Well, I'd suggest two core principles, and this gets back to something that you were saying before. The first is to recognize that we're all interconnected and interdependent. Okay, we're not isolated beings. I wouldn't be here right now. Electricity wouldn't be working. I wouldn't have gotten some food if a lot of things hadn't happened. So we have to respect each other. We have to recognize how important we each are to each other. Past, present, and future, right? What's the logo there for the G20 summit that's coming? One Earth, one family, one future. Another thing is to redefine family. This is a photograph all the photographs here are the black and white ones anyway. These are all photographs that I've taken. So these are part of my, I didn't mention that, sorry. When I was in Bir at a monastery there, I was living there for a few days. And one of the senior monks invited me into his private quarters. And I naively started asking about his family. And before long, it became clear he wasn't talking about his biological family. He started as a monk at age 6, and it was the monks that raised him. And it expanded my view and my definition of family. And you notice the interconnection here of the hands, a hand on his head, which would not, no one other than a close family member would put their hands on the top of a child's head like that in this culture. A hand over his heart. Okay. The interconnectedness. They're all interconnected, interdependent. So also, that's extrinsic, but intrinsic, the heart and mind are also interconnected and interdependent. I remember when His Holiness I was with him and he was talking about the heart and mind. I didn't know what he was talking about. And then was educated a little bit more about the concept of Sita. And that each guides and each supports each other. So if we're all in our brain the whole time and what the book is telling us and not listening to what our heart, what our conscience, what our instincts are telling us, we're going to be lost. Flip side also true. If we're just all emotional about everything and don't take into consideration, some of that wisdom, then again, we're out of balance. So again, the key is finding the balance between the two. So let's just talk about a few practical strategies. Number one, quality sleep, essential. 20% or more of the population has chronic sleep problems. So if I'm not sleeping well, I'm not thinking as clearly. So one thing you might want to consider is figuring out how to get a better night's sleep. You're welcome to get a hold of me. You can do it through my website, kolkinphotography.com, or the Shades of Compassion website. I can send you some little spreadsheet on some of the strategies you can use for that. Please don't hesitate to contact me. So what other things? Time management. I like this 24 stone rule. So think about 24 stones. One stone represents each hour in your day. And just take a minute to think about how are you using those stones. Put them into categories. One stone's for sleep maybe, one's for work, one's for, you put those together. Think about that. 2 hours today are spent here. I don't know if it's a good idea, but they're here. So we all have different ways that we stack those stones. So what I would like to suggest is in order to regain that balance in your life, maybe take one stone and cut it into 4 pieces, 15 minutes. Do that for 2 days out of the week. Think about something that you've always wanted to do, that hobby, that walk somewhere, that getting together with a friend, that whatever it might be that gosh, only if I had time. And just ask yourself, could I take 15 minutes twice a week, put it into my cell phone, put it in my calendar and do it, and maybe set myself for success, not failure, by saying, I'm going to commit to that 15 minutes twice a week for, God bless, for 4 weeks, just 4 weeks. And then after 4 weeks, I'm going to reassess. Do I want to add another quarter of a stone to another day? Or is this not really fulfilling? Do I want to try something else? You can take these baby steps to get back into alignment, back into balance. Another thing, realistic expectations. No, you can't do everything. I can't, for sure. So having realistic expectations, again, setting yourself up for success, not failure. Play to your strengths. As I mentioned, I have difficulty with reading and writing. So when was doing international medical volunteer work for 20 years on and off, I made sure I had an interpreter that knew medicine and knew English well and knew their own language well. Because for me to try and learn another language is a waste of time because I'm just horrible at it. So get help where you need help and focus on your strengths and how you can develop them to your advantage. Don't let others define you. You don't have to fit a cookie cutter of what it means to be a person, okay? Or to have this profession, whatever that might be. Don't let others define you. Follow your instincts and your passions. And then learn how to focus. This is really, really key. This is step number 1, because if we can't focus on the present, then we're less likely to be able to remember our values and prioritize what we're doing throughout the day. So there are different forms of meditation. The ones that we're all familiar with, sitting meditation. In Eastern Asia, they do a lot of walking meditation. And for some, that works very, very well. For me, I'd go stir crazy if I were doing sitting meditation. It's just not me. But get me into a pool, that's different. So when I decided what hotel to stay at here for 5 days, I picked one that had a good pool for swimming laps. So with swimming, I'm counting my breath, focused on my strokes, focused on the aerodynamics of gliding through the water, and I'm present. And I'm present. So that also jives with my values, one of which is physical and emotional health. So I'm not multitasking, but I'm focused on both my physical and emotional health by meditating while swimming. So find out what works for you. It's different for everyone. I swim, you might bike, you might walk up and down a flight of stairs. There are also mini meditations that you can do. Loving kindness meditation, you all are familiar with that. Science shows that it's probably one of the best forms of meditation. It can be done in 3 minutes. A specific color. So when I see the color red, I think of the heart, I think of compassion. You may decide that purple is the color you associate with gratitude, and that's important to you. So every time you see the color purple, think of gratitude. Something you wear that has special meaning to you, and every time you put it on or look at it, it reminds you of something of value, maybe a member of your family or environment or whatever it might be. My cell phone, guess who it has a picture of? My 2 granddaughters. Okay? You can do a screensaver. The code that you use to get into your cell phone, what do the numbers mean to you? Do they have any meaning to you? Could they have any meaning to you? I said the screensaver. Sorry, I got that one out of order. A positive action, a smile. At first, it may seem forced. smiling at a minimum of 3 strangers that you pass along the street. But after a while, it becomes what I call not second nature, first nature. It just becomes part of who you are. I choose not to label myself or introduce myself as a surgeon, because that implies to potentially others and to myself that I'm there to do surgery on people. No, I'm a physician there to help other people. And if they happen to maybe benefit from surgery, sure, I'm happy to help. But I'm not a surgeon, I'm a physician. So word choice. Do I hate something? I may dislike something, but I don't hate anything. A smell, a song, a mantra. First bite of food is another really good one, for multiple reasons, for health reasons. Whenever I sit down for a meal, the first thing I do is I try, if I have the option of using a small fork or a small spoon, not the big ones. And I look at the plate and what I have there, and I pick something out and think about where did it come from, how did it get there, what were all the processes involved, what it might taste like, what its shape is, what its texture might be like. And then I put it in my mouth, roll it around on my tongue, feel its shape, then bite into it, taste it, chew it to make sure it's the consistency of toothpaste before I swallow it. That's important for digestion. And then, then visualize it as it goes down my throat. It takes 30 seconds, but it's a form of mini meditation. And it also helps me to focus on the food, not do this while I'm talking to somebody or, on the computer. My wife's a big Jimmy Buffett fan. I don't know if any of you know who he is, but he's real well known in the United States. And he has a song, "Everywhere you go, you always bring the weather with you." And it's true. So if you're surrounded by negativity all the time, what they call doom scrolling, I just heard this term, we were, on your social media all the time, oh my God, what's happening in this remote part of the world, then that's not good for you to be constantly bombarded by that. You're not putting rose-colored glasses over your eyes. I mean, those things are there, but you don't have to be bombarded by it day in and day out. And negativity bias. And there are actually different podcasts and things you can find. I'm happy to share these and others where people are talking about some of the positive things that are going on in the world. So look for acts of kindness in your daily life. So while I was sitting here, I noticed that when I went to reach for my glass, 2 people tried to help me to bring the glass around. I could have just let that, no, she wanted to help me. And I appreciate that, even though I didn't reach over and, hug her, But notice those things because they're there all the time. Most people's nature is they really want to do good, even if they're doing things that aren't helpful, aren't positive. Their intentions are oftentimes good, maybe misguided, maybe not guided by wisdom, but it's there. It's there. Stay physically active and make it fun. Do something you enjoy to do. Okay? Find synergies. This is what I was talking about before. This is not multitasking. So with my overseas work, what I would do is photography. I'd be working in the hospital. I'd be meeting new people, new cultures, hopefully learning something, and also hiking in the Himalayas, great form of physical exercise. One of my family members would come with me one-on-one. So when my daughters were like about 13 years old, they would come with me one-on-one. My eldest daughter, up at the top, loved being around all the physicians, would teach them English and hang out in the operating room a lot. My youngest daughter, superb, world-class dancer, can't stand the sight of blood. So what did she do? She went to an orphanage in Vietnam, in this case, and taught dance to deaf children in an orphanage with the vibrations. Okay, so my wife went to the Tibet, what's it called, up in Dharamsala, where the young children are. Yeah, C2B, and she worked there while I was working at the at Dalai Hospital. Okay, so she loves being with you little children. So including family is really important. It's really helpful. Okay, and that's not multitasking, but that's again staying in line with your values and just doing a little planning. We have an exhibition that's today's the last day at the Museo Camera. Um, a Sacred Path, Seeking True Happiness. It uses intimate photographs that I've taken of Mahayana Buddhists as they go through their daily practices to explore universally relevant strategies for navigating through life's challenges guided by compassion and wisdom. It's photographs that I've taken over this project over the last 13 years. So it was at the Tibet Museum in Dharamsala for 3 months. Wonderful, wonderful museum. If you haven't been there, please go. The local monastery monks were kind enough to come over and make this sand mandala. This is from the exhibition. And then it's just closing tonight at the Museo Camera here in the area. And the exhibition walks through a 6-step process for navigating through life's challenges guided by compassion and wisdom. So this 6-step process is a way that we can all get through some of those struggles. And what I've done in the exhibition is take a photograph of a particular practice that Buddhists do. It may be lighting a butter lamp, and showing how it relates to one or more of those 6 steps in the process. So people go around in a clockwise direction, going from step 1, which is focusing on the present. Okay, as I said before, that's step number 1. If I'm in the hospital in an operating room and doing surgery and I'm not focused, things can go wrong. Okay, and if I'm focused and I notice that there's something odd going on, my first clue that what I'm seeing is not what we had anticipated, I have to be in tune with how my body and my emotions, how I'm responding to the situation. Am I clenching my teeth? Am I tensing my muscles? Am I breathing fast? I have to be aware of that. Same for all of us. When you're in a situation, you need to be aware of those red flags that are going up that, I'm kind of getting a little out of balance here. Once I'm able to do that in the operating room, then what I need to do is slow down my breathing, right? You just slow down your breathing. Restoring calm. That's called emotion regulation or dialectical behavioral therapy in the West, that calming. So that's really, really key. So that helps us clear the mind. Then what I have to do in the operating room is resolve destructive emotions, my bias. What I was expecting to find this when I went in, it's got to be there. No, it may not be there. So I got to put my ego aside. I can't be worried. What are the people in the operating room thinking that Dr. Kolkin has moved back from the operating table and he's stopped operating for a minute? I can't worry about that. I can't worry about, what someone thinks. Put our ego aside. Put greed aside. Frustration, anger. Put those things aside. Then summon wisdom. Hopefully I have some, and I'll try to summon some wisdom. What's really going on? Why is that person in your conversation with someone, why are they responding the way they are? What's really going on? And then put together some plans so that I can hopefully respond with compassion. What's the right thing to do in this situation, what I'm finding when I'm going in here? And that's how we achieve true happiness, nirvana. That's how we reach that balance. So that's really what I wanted to speak about today. Feel free to contact me. I'm easily available through our foundation's website, shadesofcompassion.org. please don't hesitate to reach out. The same through my photography website, kolkinphotography.com. So with that, I'd like to just thank everyone for being here, for taking time out of your day to prioritize being here. And with that, I just really simply like to open it up to conversation. Any questions? And see where we go from there. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Dr. Kolkin, for that wonderful presentation. So I'll take the prerogative of the chair to kick off a question. So my question to you is, how did you get engaged? So I understand you are a surgeon by training. So how did you come to explore so many different things, including photography, and then getting connected to, I would love to know.
Well, excellent question. So what I'd like to say is that this gets back to not being labeled, but following your own path. Be who you are, being true to your nature. Because if you're not, then there's this tension inside. You know something's wrong, you know something's out of balance, but you're not sure why. So growing up, as an example, I was, I guess what you call an athlete. I ran track and field, captain of the track team, all that sort of thing. But I never really looked at myself as being an athlete or being in that jock crowd, having to fit in. You know, in high school, you always want to fit in with the crowd, you know. I really didn't care too much about that. At the same time, I've always loved music. I played the clarinet. I trained with the principal clarinetist of the National Symphony Orchestra. I was selected to be a member of the American Youth Symphony. We did a 10-country European tour, concert tour. But I never felt that I had to be that part of that group. Similarly, I was reasonably good academically, but, you know, I didn't have to be the bookworm. So I was just true to who I was or tried to be, and I just stumbled upon that. I didn't do it intentionally. And actually what happened was, it's interesting to some, that what really got me into medical school was my music background. Because what happened was, when I went off to college, I wasn't able to keep playing the clarinet at the level I was at, but I enjoyed music still, so I joined a course and sang and whatnot. And the head of the music department took a liking to me, and when it was time for interviews, really came to bat for me. So at that time, it was during the Vietnam War, and everyone in the United States was trying to get a draft deferment, and one way to do that was go to medical school. So I was able to get an interview to the medical school I ended up going to, and what they did is they lined up 6 people at a long table, candidates, and 6 faculty on the opposite side. And we know that on average, 2 of us out of the 6 would be receiving an invitation to go, and 1 of us would end up going. They asked each person one of the questions was, who in life do you admire? And each of the others were talking about some obscure scientist or whatever. I started talking about Johann Sebastian Bach and his variations on a theme and seeing things from multiple perspectives. And I got accepted. I think that was one of the reasons. Similar, when I went to my interview for my residency, the chairman of the department, you have to go in there, and it's this dark room and, you know, paneled room, and, you know, he's the chairman of the department, and he pulls out my folder and says, "Oh, you were a member of the American Youth Symphony. So you're a musician?" I said, "Yes." Closes the folder, puts it down on the table, turns on the classical music, didn't ask me a single question related to medicine. We talked about music the whole time. Okay. So that's what I'm saying, that having that balance and trying to be authentic, I stumbled upon that, but I had no idea I would ever be in the position I'm in now. I mean, I've had the honor of being around His Holiness, or to be, doing exhibitions on compassion around the world. I had no idea. But I always continued my passion for photography, which was just intrinsic to me from an early age.
Good evening. It was a pleasure listening to you, sir. Um, I had the pleasure of hosting your exhibition long time back at the Habitat Center. So now I happen to be in Delhi and I just get to know about it, and I was rushing towards the Tibet house. So I would like to ask this Dr. Kolkin, you've been to so many different places in the world, right? And then according to your one of the research, I think the compassion and wisdom. So according to you, you've seen so many different cultures, right? Of different religious background too. So in terms of looking at through the lens of culture and people, what was your experience that if you have to describe compassion and wisdom of these people in different places, how you would summarize, or how would you, I don't know,
Sure.
explain?
Sure. I'll do the best I can. I've spent a significant amount of time. I've been in South America, Central America, Eastern Europe, Africa, and throughout Asia. This is my 26th time in Asia in 25 years. So my heart is much more, well, here I've had more experience being throughout Asia. And it's interesting. Let me give you an example. In Malawi in Africa, the socioeconomic level is very similar to Moldova in Eastern Europe. Cultures are very, very different. In Malawi, the people are very free, open, much more relaxed, much more, they're not guarded. In Moldova, Eastern European bloc, it's when we would do a group photograph, me with all the physicians, I'd be there in the middle smiling, and then they would show me the photograph later. Everybody else is, like this. Whereas in Malawi, everyone's smiling. So, but they're facing very similar challenges. So it's the mindset. It's the mindset. And I see that to varying degrees all over the world. The challenges are very similar. Bless you. But how we respond can be so different from one place to another. And there are reasons why in Moldova they have a more of a challenge. And so it's not to say you're good people, you're not, but it's their background, their experience, the way they've been brought up, the way, that really seems to impact people. But we all can learn that if we have that toolkit, we can all, and that's why I'm so appreciative of Buddhist philosophy, because it's so healthy in so many ways. Again, I apologize for my disagreement on the use of the word suffering, but other than that, yeah, yeah. I can't hear it. Sorry.
Hello, sir. I would want you to elaborate a bit more on your very different type of definition of compassion. I'll clarify it a bit more. That what is the secret to being happy when you see the misery and distress all around? To the people who are in pathetic situation
Mhm.
without any fault of theirs.
Mhm.
You can blame it on Almighty or whoever. Nobody cares for them.
Mhm.
Society doesn't care for them. Politicians don't care for them because obviously they're not in a situation to go to a polling booth. So they are of no use to them.
Yep. Yep.
So, what is the secret of not feeling guilty of your own self every single morning that you put on a good cloth? You feel guilty that there are millions who can't even afford a basic piece of clothing. The fundamentals. I mean, if half an hour in Delhi, what is happening for last 1 week? So
Yeah, with floods.
if it is raining, we feel trapped. But what about the people who, if in half an hour of rain, they have to change their shelter
Right.
every half an hour. They don't have proper food. And if I start getting into depression seeing them, that they are into this misery because without any fault of theirs, and I start going every single morning on a guilt trip, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing anything. If I want to help them, I can help one person, two persons, a dozen of people, scores of people. But I'm not Bill Gates. I can't do anything for all of them.
Right.
So I just want the answer to not feel guilty.
Yeah.
So, sir, I don't know whether this is a...
It's an excellent question, because that's our natural instinct, is to want to go reach out here, reach out there, reach out there. You know, the problem is that it's overwhelming. And if we get spread too thin, then we're not effective anywhere. Which gets back to this idea that I have about know where your strengths are. And think clearly about where can I have the most positive impact. I can't do it all. I can't do it all. What I can do is being here, and because of my background, I can be one small piece of the puzzle. We're all interconnected. We're all interdependent. The summation of all of our small efforts combined is what's going to make the difference. That's what's going to create the tidal wave. And as long as I can stay focused on the things that I'm good at, then I have to be able to step back and say, that's a healthy way to move forward. To be truly helpful for others while protecting myself at the same time. Otherwise, it's overwhelming. So find out what are those one or two areas where it really aligns with my values and my passion. And stay focused. Stay focused on that. That's the only way forward. And if we talk about quantum physics, talk about the universe, and we could just have a whole other 2-hour conversation on that. But it's the idea that all these energy forces, the summation of all these energy forces, is the true thing that moves planets, that changes mindset on this planet. But it has to be that cumulative effect of everyone doing their part. Okay. So that's what helps me. And if you, again, watch the documentary with His Holiness and Desmond Tutu, you'll notice that when Desmond Tutu starts talking about his childhood, an alcoholic father, and who abused his mother, and watch His Holiness's face, he immediately changes his face, and he feels it. Again, I'm saying he can feel it without hurting himself because he's much more skilled than I. But he does that, okay? But then, as soon as he finishes that, just like this, he's back, he's focused again, he's in the present of what can he do to help. So he doesn't say mired in the mud of Desmond Tutu's agony that he experienced. He uses the tools that he has to then move forward in a positive way. He engages with the wisdom. So watch that. Watch his facial expression and how that changes. Okay, that's what he does. In my opinion, I may be totally wrong. He hasn't told me that, but I'm watching him from a psychological perspective and as a physician's perspective. That's what I'm seeing. Yeah. I hope that helps. Yeah.
Good evening, Dr. Kolkin. I have one question. Like in my life, I've met few people. So, hello. Yeah. So, like few people I met, and sometimes when they talk with me face to face, I can read that they are lying. I knew that from within. I just knew that. I can see it from their expression, and I also knew it. But then, so the problem is, I don't know how to react. Although I know they are lying, so is it okay for me to ignore them, or should I say stop lying? If I ignore them, how can I ignore them? Because like when I see people lying, some people like they battle lies in front of me, so I couldn't just resist it. It like irritates me. So should I ignore them, or should I say stop lying? Thank you.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. And I think in some ways it really depends on the situation about what's the best thing to do. And it depends on how close the relationship is with that individual and, what's at stake. One thing that I think can be helpful is just expressing how I am feeling. In other words, I think I heard what you said, but I'm feeling uncomfortable. And I want to make sure I understand clearly what you're trying to tell me because it's just not feeling right. Would you mind please repeating that so I understand what you're trying to tell me? And that kind of brings it more to a personal level rather than saying, I don't believe anything you're saying. I'm feeling uncomfortable, but I'm not sure why. Give them an opportunity. They may still come back with the same thing, but then at least you know that you're hearing what they're saying and you're also not having your preconception about what they're trying to say or, what you've heard about them before, influencing what you think you're hearing. So they may be lying, they may not be lying, maybe partial. So you, again, just have to work your way through that. And it may be a matter of coming back another time or getting some other information from some other people or some other sources, and then figuring out a opportunity to be back with that individual again. It may be that it's a conversation that's really quick and it's not a good time to really get into a more in-depth conversation. And it may be a matter of saying, I'm a little confused by what you're saying, and maybe now's not the time. Maybe we can get this into a little more detail. Do you mind if we get together again? You just have to feel through that. I think one of the things, and Venerable Geshe and I were talking about this just a little bit ago, is your instincts, and whether someone appears genuine or not. They don't even necessarily have to say something. You just tell with their body language sometimes, So we have to, again, take into consideration What are my antennas going up, when I'm in a situation? But if I'm not really present, if I'm not really looking into their eyes, if I'm distracted, then communications can really get out of whack, out of balance.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Jon Kolkin. It was such a wonderful session, and how you displayed your presentation in much a simplest form. It was really wonderful. Thank you. So my question is, regarding, as you have shown in your presentation, your lovely family. So my question is regarding our own family. I want to ask you how you create and what are the challenges that you face in your family to create a balanced life, regarding your perception and your perception of your family members. Because, I think most probably in the big families, family members are like someone with whom we,
Thank you.
spend most of the time. So, so I just want to know your views and how you manages to create a balanced life among your family members. Thank you.
Wonderful question. Thank you. We don't choose who our biological family members are going to be, right? There will be some personalities that do not get along well. We can be respectful, but that doesn't mean we have to take on their challenges. That's number one. Number two, it's not your job to change someone. Okay? They have to want to make adjustments, become more balanced. One can be compassionate and respectful and give them space and be supportive, but there's a point when being supportive of others gets out of balance with caring for one's own physical and emotional health. So I think that's extremely important for all of us to recognize. That's the reality. That's the reality. And there will be times when there are certain family members that you get along with very well. But again, there might be some ups and downs, and that's okay too. That's part of, our existence. That's part of what some people would call the suffering. So again, it's just a matter of what are my values? What's realistic? Do I have unrealistic expectations? One way of looking at it also is like an hourglass with sand in it. You know what that looks like? And you turn it over, and that there's only so much sand in there. There's only so much of that sand you can dedicate to others before you run out of sand. Okay? So there's a finite amount that you can give. If you give it with compassion, with a true concern for their well-being, then that's the best I can do. Yeah. And certainly I have some of my own, not my immediate family members, but other biological family members, let's say, that are quite challenging and at times disappointing. But that is the reality. So yeah, that's an excellent question. Anything else that I didn't cover, or did that seem to? Okay. Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Kolkin. My question is, in your presentation, you have mentioned that we need to be compassionate if it benefits others, right? So, but I personally think that, the compassionate person can help everybody
because if a person shows a compassionate gesture to someone, then I think that person will extend, his or her compassion. So I personally think that being a compassionate person, it will benefit everyone. So I was just curious to know that why you have specifically mentioned that, in your presentation, that be compassionate to those who benefit others. So my question is,
Right.
thank you.
Yes, the question is what I selected those words intentionally, to all who might benefit. Well, that's everybody. That's every animal. That's that plant. That's Mother Earth. All who might, and self. All who might benefit, not just to others. It's to all who might benefit, which includes everybody, everything. So I use that terminology with intention. And motivated by a true concern for their well-being, a true concern. Now, is it selfish to, in the back of your mind, think, there might be some benefit to me also by being kind to other people? That's human instinct. That's not unusual. That's okay. Don't feel guilty about that. But it can't be, and it shouldn't be the primary motivator. It needs to be out of a true concern for their well-being, not what am I going to get out of it by being nice to them. But there are rewards, and the science shows us that being compassionate to others helps us in so many positive ways. Yeah.
Yeah, good evening, sir. As you know, the world is controlled by lust and desire, the main root cause of all the egos. You have mentioned about elimination of ego, right? So, as a part of compassionate and spreading the awareness, how do we change the quality of mindset to remove the elimination of all egos, so that once we are aware of our inner egos, then only the quality of our environment, everything gets changed. So what is your perspective regarding that, sir?
Would you mind summarizing that a little bit? Because I had a little trouble. I apologize. I had a little trouble hearing.
Yeah, I want to say you had mentioned something related to the elimination of our inner egos.
Of what?
The one of the slides you had mentioned about elimination of egos.
Egos.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to ask you, the root of all the egos remains in the part of lust and desire.
The root of ego. How to remove the ego.
Yeah. And as part of being compassionate beings,
Mhm.
how do we spread awareness to our fellow beings?
Yeah.
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 That is my question.
Well, one thing, and a number of you have been around His Holiness, and I say this in a respectful way. He doesn't take himself too seriously. He laughs. He jokes around. He wants you to be comfortable. He considers himself a monk in robes. So he, from my perspective, does not have a big ego. He's very humble. He has great humility. So if he can be that humble and put the ego aside, then certainly I can. My goodness. So I just try to put it in perspective, and I put on my shirt and button it one button at a time, just like somebody else might. I mean, I have to eat food. I have to sleep just like everybody else. I'm definitely no different than you are. I mean, for crying out loud, I'm just a person. So it doesn't do. It's unhealthy to have this inflated sense of self. It doesn't. It's destructive. So I just I'm just me. I just kind of look at it that way. So, yeah, arrogance, you know, it just doesn't work.
So, with that, I would like to thank you once again for a wonderful talk and beautiful question and answer session. And it's really been an honor and pleasure to have you here. And we are sorry to not have seen your photographs this time, but hopefully we get a chance to view them sometime in. Yeah. Thank you so much. And
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
thank you also to the audience and everybody at Tibet House.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Colin, thank you for enlightening us and taken to us to the many realities of your life experience to be shared with us. And thank you very much. And also to the audience, that those who have created a good question answer session to have a very interactive session. And thank you, Ajahn Karula, for chairing us. And now I would like to request our director, Venerable Geshe-la, to kindly offer the souvenir and the kata to our speaker and the chairperson, please. Dr. Jon Kolkin, please down. Professor Karila. Thank you, Geshe-la. And before I wind up today's monthly lecture, and I would like to make a humble request, those who are interested in Tibet House upcoming programs. Most of the programs are updated in Tibet House Instagram and also in Tibet House website. And I will also share it in Tibet House Facebook. So if you would like to, feel free to join us, and we have many more interesting and very educated programs coming by. Thank you. And we have organized the refreshments, and tea and refreshments are at the adjacent hall. Please feel free to have it. Yeah, thank you, and we shall see you again. Yeah.